What if I were to suggest that you play a key role in the awakening world? And that you are watching this because you have heard the call. We can start right now by opening our hearts and minds. Welcome to the awakening world.
Good evening, everybody. I am Love Coach Scott Katamas. Welcome to the Awakening World. It's our Saturday night edition, and I want to welcome all the people watching on Facebook and YouTube. And of course, I want to welcome our close core family that's in the Zoom room with us directly. And we're going to have a lot of engagement, a lot of conversation tonight, because we've got some extraordinary people here to share about their experiences with that which is above and beyond our normal 3D reality. We've done a couple of shows in the last 2 weeks. We had Danny Sheehan on the show, and we were then highlighting elements of his Global Disclosure Day, looking ahead to it and then sharing it. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But in addition to the big events going on, what's equally, if not more important, is the personal experience that people have. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight with some very amazing guests. We have with us Whitley Strieber. You may recall him from previous times he's been on the show. He, of course, wrote the groundbreaking book, Communion, which really opened the door for people to acknowledge extraordinary experiences that they've had. We have with us our beloved friend, John Martin, who, of course, is really, at this point, a regular on the show. And so we're going to hear from John. And we have some new friends. Ashley Pfeiffer is with us, and she's an experiencer. Looking forward to hearing her story. And another new friend is Cam Herndon. Welcome, Cam, to the Awakening World. It's great to have you with us. And most of all, my good buddy, friend for 40 plus years, my co-host for the show. Who else to co-host a show on this topic but Alan Steinfeld, the author of Making Contact, Mr. New Realities himself. Hello, Alan.
It's always good to be making contact with you, Scott, and all our friends and talking about my favorite topics. So thanks for doing another show.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to really, later on in the show, look at the bigger picture of what Danny is doing with Global Disclosure. But what are your thoughts about the personal part of it? You are also an experiencer.
Are you talking to me? Oh, sorry.
Yes, you, Alan Steinfeld.
I am an experiencer. My personal thoughts is that this is a people's movement. So Danny's talking about the big Washington story and how do you get congressional people, but we need to come out and share our stories. And it's when Whitley wrote Communion, he got 200,000 letters from people around the world sharing similar experiences. And if all of us got together and started to talk about this, despite what ridicule or banishment that may incur, we need to stand up and speak for what's happened to us. And I think that's why we're doing this show tonight, because it does come down to the personal. I mean, the only reason Danny had put this whole disclosure day on is because we want to expand the nature of the human experience, and that includes this other realm that's been denied to us because of social conditioning and consensus reality. So what we want to do here, and what I did in my book, is to open up this area that allows us to think outside the box. And it's been part of the government cover-up to ridicule people or to deny them. And we're changing that. And that's really behind the disclosure movement, to expand the nature of the embodied experience. And that's why I'm excited about this.
Beautifully stated. We're going to open it up to our audience. So we definitely want to hear some of the stories. This is a safe place for people to share their story of contact, or sometimes it might be contact with what we would say is an EP, or maybe with the angelic realm, or even ancestors. So for those of you watching on Facebook or YouTube, come and join us. And it's easy to do that. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com. You can learn all about us. You can see all the different shows that we do. And click register for the new season. And that'll take you, after identifying that you are a human being, it'll take you to all the different ways you can join us. And by joining us, you're going to be able to get personal contact and come right into our Zoom room. We do 2 or 3 shows every week on extraordinary topics with amazing people. This month alone, we've had Dr. Jude Caravan, we've had Greg Braden, Neil Donald Walsh, and people like Whitley Strieber. And along those lines, I'm going to turn it over to you, Alan, to introduce Whitley.
Yes, Whitley is one of the contributors to this book, Making Contact, and he's someone who has probably had more personal, conscious interaction with these beings than anyone else on the planet, because he's practiced lucid awareness. He knows for 50 or more years, he's done a meditation that he thinks in communion has brought this awareness of these beings to him and him to these beings. I'm just going to read a little quote that he said, that you said, Whitley, at Contact in the Desert last June. He says, Congress can monkey all around with what they want, and the government can fight all they want, but what matters is our relationship to the visitors and the experiencer, and building that across the world. So it comes back to you, Whitley, and your book, and your courage to come forward and share something that was so outrageous that it cost you a lot, but you gained a lot. So thank you for being here. And I love your deep philosophical understanding of what it is to be an experience and what that means to change our nature of reality. So please comment.
Well, first of all, we have to differentiate between disclosure and contact. They're 2 different things. The fact that eventually, if Danny succeeds, and Danny is an old friend, we've known each other for many years, and I think he's an absolutely wonderful man, and he's fortunately not alone out there like I was, and in fact, Danny was for years, sort of at the end of the plank, being prodded by people with surprisingly sharp spears. So disclosure may happen. It may be that there is an official level where they finally say, well, yes, there is somebody else here. And then they have to somehow explain themselves in the 80 years of lying. But, it's a government. They'll figure it out, how to do that, how to spin it. But the other side of the coin is contact. What is this? Many years ago now, and surprisingly many, because I don't feel all that old, in December of 1985, the day after Christmas, I was awakened in the middle of the night by what I would describe as a disturbance, which at first, of course, I thought it was in my bedroom. Uh, but when I opened my eyes, I didn't see my bedroom. I saw what appeared to me to be a rather large bug staring at me. And, at the time, I had written a number of horror novels. Some of them made into movies a long time ago. The Wolf and the Hunger, still very enjoyable if you can find them online, by the way. So I thought, I'm dreaming one of my novels. I knew nothing about lucid dreaming or anything at the time at all, or about aliens, nothing. I had been fascinated by flying saucers when I was a little boy because they were very much part of the conversation back in those days. But by the time I got into high school, they weren't part of the conversation anymore, and I forgot about it. I forgot about my entire childhood with the visitors, in fact, and that didn't come back to me until later. Anyway, back to December the 26th, 1985, I naturally became extremely concerned by what was going on because the idea of aliens has never even entered my mind. What I did think when I couldn't wake up from this experience, I kept trying to make my bed come back into reality because I felt like I was awake, was that I was going crazy. And I couldn't get out of it. It was absolutely terrifying. But then it became very physical. They inserted a device into my rectum and raped me with it, causing an ejaculation, and they took the semen from me. I had the experience of my rape becoming an international joke for years. You're talking about being bullied in public. That did it. The rectal probe became a huge joke. And it was agonizing for years and years and years to have to sit down in public and listen to media people snickering about my rectal probe and thinking to myself and remembering how terribly hard it was to experience that rape. I think I'm the only person whose rape has ever been laughed at on a mass scale. So anyway, so people say you say, you went out there and it wasn't easy. You're absolutely right. It sure wasn't. Anywho, back to that night. The experience ends fairly abruptly. I hear a voice, a mechanical voice saying, "What can we do to help you stop screaming?" Now, fast forward a year. A friend of mine who lived down the road from me came over to the house after my book Communion had been published and knocked on the door. And he had been a state trooper. He was retired at the time. Knocked on the door and said to me, "Whitley, I want to apologize to you." I said, "Well, why?" I was amazed. We were good friends and he had no reason that I knew of to apologize to him. And he said, "Well, listen, I read your book. I hadn't told many of my friends about it because, it was a quiet rural area and I was afraid I'd be ostracized. So, which happened anyway, but that's another story. Anyway, he says, we were coming home that night at about 2 a.m. and I saw what I thought was the Goodyear blimp in a field near our houses. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, and the field is still the same. And it's about a mile and a half from our houses. And he said, I thought I saw what looked to me like the Goodyear blimp in that field. And I said, well, what happened? And he said, well, I thought I ought to stop and render aid. I mean, I'm a state police officer, even though he's retired. So I got out of the car, pulled over, got out of the car, got across the fence and started walking through the snow toward this object. And when I did, I heard someone in it screaming. And I began to run toward it as best I could because he was in some pretty deep snow. And he said, suddenly lights turned on all over it and began to make a growling noise and come toward me. And Whitley, he said, frankly, I got scared and I turned around and my wife was screaming in the car anyway. Because apparently, by the way, this thing had been around in the area for years and I didn't know it. I didn't know that the Hudson Valley UFO events, which were some of the biggest UFO events in history, were happening a few miles away across the Hudson River. I didn't know any of this. So he says, I got in the car and we drove home, and I feel like I should have tried to help you now that I realize it was you in there. And I said, you did the right thing. If God knows what would have happened to you if you had gone out in that field or tried to do anything. And I'm still here. And so no need to apologize. And we concluded that conversation and never brought it up again. But this is what happened. This is what happened. Afterwards, it took me, flashing back to right after Christmas, about 6 weeks to figure out that this actually had been a real thing, because you're talking about somebody who came to this with no knowledge whatsoever that it could, anything like that could ever happen. Finally, I got it straightened out, and I eventually met Bud Hopkins and went on the trajectory I've been on ever since. Subsequently, I've written Transformation, Breakthrough, The Secret School, Confirmation, A New World, Them, and now my new book, which is coming out on this, which is going to blow the lid off of the whole thing, finally, is called The Fourth Mind. So this is what I am. Now, my experience of the visitors is primarily physical. In other words, I started after Annie and I got through this, and we had a lot of trouble at first because I was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder without knowing it. And I became really hard to live with. And we were fighting until finally I realized what had happened. And I told a friend of mine, Timothy Greenfield Saunders, I said, Tim, I should say, doesn't like to be called Timmy anymore. Must remember that. Anyway, how am I going to tell Ann? I can't tell her I was taken aboard a flying saucer by little men. And he said, just tell her. And so I thought, my God, we've talked about divorce a little bit. Maybe she'll say, she's liable to say, well, okay, let's do it when I tell her this. But I had to tell my wife I loved her so much, we didn't hide anything from each other. So I say to Annie the whole story. Basically, I was taken aboard a flying saucer by little men. She looks at me, and I look at her, and I'm waiting for her to say, fine, that's it, we're done. Instead, she says, oh, thank God. Now I don't have to get a divorce. In that moment, that marriage was sealed for eternity. Because there's another book out there called Afterlife Revolution, which is about what happened after Annie passed away and came back. I'm going to talk about that tonight. She took over. She decided to call the book Communion. She was the one who decided we should write a book. She read every word of it. She made it what it is, which is a book of deep searching questions about who we are, where we are, and what in the world they are. After it was published, we got those hundreds of thousands of letters that you talked about. There are now 4,000 of them, but the most complex of these letters are housed in an archive at Rice University, in the Archives of the Impossible, thanks to my dear friend and co-author of a book called Supernatural, Jeffrey Kripal. So they've been memorialized. They're now safe in a university archive for all to read, and they represent the core of contact, their first contact. And they were there because the cover of Communion, that face, made millions of people realize that, hey, that weird dream I had, that was real. It must have been, because he's had it too. In other words, the book triggered contact, not on the government level. They were already into it, but we didn't know that. But on the ordinary people level, and that's where I live. That's where I am. And to be honest with you, that's where the visitors are too. They're interested in us first. They've already been shot at by the Air Force, plenty. And they're not that engaged on that level. On our level, the most recent encounter I had with them, with other people witnessing it, was 3 weeks ago in a forested area where we had gone because, for various reasons, we felt we would meet them there, and we did. And this is entirely real. This is what it is on the human level, on the ordinary level, and on the physical level, to be in contact. Because after I wrote Communion, and while I was writing it, actually, not afterwards, Annie said, Whitley, you should maybe try to recontact them. And I said to myself, I thought, how would I do that? And so we decided that experimentally to go out in the woods at night to the place where I had been taken from, which I found very easily. I knew the woods well. I knew exactly where they had taken me out of the house. I was briefly in a little clearing with a group of them. And then I shot up into the air, and I found the clearing easily. I remembered exactly where it was. So I said, okay, good. We'll start going out there at night at the same hour, and try to re-engage with them, to make it known that we're interested and we want to more.
Yeah,
And
but
this,
Whitley, how did you get over the trauma of that? I mean, how did you deal with such a severe?
I didn't deal with it. I just sucked it up because, my
Oh,
God, I mean, I'm not going to sit back and pout when something incredible like this is in my life. My curiosity overcame my fear and my anger, and also my desire, frankly, to make this work, because it wasn't working very well then, was it? Um, so I decided I would go out in the woods. And I said to Annie one night, I said, well, let's do it. Let's go out. And she said, there's a problem. It's you, Whitley. You're the one who they took. You go out by yourself. I've got a little boy here in this house, and I'm not leaving his side to go out in the woods in the night while he's asleep. So I did. And the first night I struggled. I went out I couldn't get past the edge of the yard. I couldn't get into those woods. But then I began to go out in the woods, and a relationship started. The trajectory is from absolute fear, being injured, being violated, to what it is now, the richest and most incredible relationship you can possibly imagine, with these extraordinary, complex, remarkable entities, and who have seemingly all kinds of remarkable powers, like invisibility, levitation, healing, all kinds of things. But I have understood this deeply enough to where I know that we have these powers too. And the purpose of the fourth mind is to show everyone how to unlock this door. And this gets back to the contact and the disclosure differential. Disclosure is about saying they're here. Hopefully, the bodies that were for many years at Fort Detrick, will be the biology studies that have done on them will be released, and that'll probably be down the road. But that's all one thing. We're here tonight. We're here because we're another thing. We are contact, not just the experiencers of today, but all of us, because they're not here for one or two people or 50 people or a million people. They're here for everybody. And
hmm
it isn't going to be easy, and it isn't going to be anything like what we expect if their relationships with others are going to be anything like their relationship with me. But it is going to revolutionize the human experience and make us ultimately a cosmic species. And that's where we want to go, isn't it? Out into the universe, but not in some rocket, for God's sakes. We want to do it like they do it.
So disclosure is sort of the first. I mean, they're here, but they're not just here to show off and do fancy things in the air, but they're here as the first level for what you're talking about. We have to get through disclosure to get into the contact experience. We have to acknowledge that something's here, and then why they're here is maybe what you're talking about.
Right. Well, but they're not here because they're not interested in us. They're here because they are interested in us.
Right.
And and they're terribly difficult. They're not easy to live with. When you're dealing with them on a physical level, it's not easy, but it is very wonderful. And I didn't mention, by the way, Alan, that this is also connected with our own dead, very connected with our own dead. Like that first night, there was a man there I knew from high school and college, and he had joined the Central Intelligence Agency, and I hadn't heard much from him since then. And of course, after I remembered what had happened and I realized that he had been there, I thought, aha, I wrote a book called War Day in those days with a friend of mine, Jim Konetka, and it had not gone over well with the Reagan administration, not at all. And I thought, I'm being attacked here because of that book. They're trying to drive me crazy to discredit the book. That was one of my thoughts. So I thought, I'll call him, damn it. And I called him, and his line was disconnected, and that didn't surprise me. I hadn't called him in years. So I called his brother, and I had the shock of my life when his brother says to me, Whitley, he's been dead since last March. I was sitting there with a dead man and all of these strange beings. Months and years, or nearly over a year later, Annie came out of her office once. She was the one who read all the letters. They came in huge heaps. The postmans were just dumping them on our living room floor. And I said, these letters a lot of them are very intimate, and they have people's addresses and names on them. We can't throw them out. What are we going to do? She said, we're going to read them. I said, I can't possibly read all these letters. She said, well, I can. She bought a letter opener, and she did. She read them all. In any case, we had we were in this situation, and she comes out of her office and she says one day, Whitley, this has something to do with what we call death. And in the letters, you see many cases where the dead friends and relatives are with the visitors. And it used to happen in our cabin because Annie also had an uncanny ability to choose people from the list. She'd take a letter and put it aside, and she'd say, we're going to invite this person up to the cabin because they'll have a contact experience when they're there. I said, how do you know? She said, just do it, Whitley. And so I would do it, and it would happen. It happened with many groups of people, in groups, not just one single individual, but in sequential encounters from one room to another in groups. It was real, and it really happened.
But what's the connection?
Let me give you the connection. Just be patient with me.
Thank you.
I'll give you the connection right now. Before the visitors would show up, often there would be an encounter with a dead friend or relative on the part of one of the people there. And Annie would always say quietly to me, they'll be here later. And they were every time. And sometimes, in one case, there were people sleeping in the basement, and they woke up to see a friend who had died in an earthquake 4 or 5 years before, standing at the foot of the bed, while the people in the living room sleeping upstairs were having a close encounter with the visitors, with the aliens. So this is all connected. And what's going to happen here is this world of ours is going to get much bigger. We are isolated behind a kind of veil. We call it, of course, the veil. And it's near Halloween, so the veil is growing thin, isn't it? But on the other side of that veil will be our dead and someone who can cross the veil easily between the physical and the non-physical worlds. And that's the little gray people with the great big eyes. And they are going to vastly expand the human reality.
Wow.
Whitley, I want to ask you a question, and then we're going to take a little break for an Omishar song just to kind of digest all of this because it's so beautiful to digest. But several of our Zoom room audience is asking about how you were able to open your heart to them more after such an intense violation, and just the juxtaposition between the level of trauma and violation in your first encounter and your journey into acceptance and even embracing them.
I was determined to do it. I knew what happened to me, and it wasn't good. It was awful, but I am absolutely no way was I going to sit back and just let this pass because I'm pissed off. I want to be bigger than that. And yeah, they had a voice in there, this mechanical voice that kept saying, "What can we do to help you stop screaming? What can we do to help you stop screaming?" They didn't know what they were doing any more than I did. They were doing something and they were not doing it well. And I do not approve of the whole abduction phenomenon at all. It was a mistake on their part. They treated us like animals, and it took them a long time to realize that's not what we were. I mean, they treated us exactly like we treat a lion out in the veld who we have to tag, or a bull that we want to have mate with a cow, with a heifer. They treated us like animals.
Mhm.
Now they don't so much anymore. They're much more aware of the fact that we are complex thinking beings like them. There's the idea that they have been here a long time, but I don't think the people who are here now have a long history with us. I think they might like us to believe that, but I think that they are too unaware of us to have had that long history. Although the jinn and the fairy folk and so forth are versions of them, I think that it's a big universe and beings come and go. But yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I would not stop. And the fact that it started badly did not make me stop. I will not stop.
Well, that's interesting that they have changed their consciousness about us. That's a really significant piece of
Yeah.
information here.
Well, they have about me anyway, because I'm get along with them fine. My book, A New World, I wrote most of it at a very isolated country house where they were coming. They came a lot to that house, and they're very shy. They don't want to be touched, and they want to be near you because they're also rather fragile. If you see them in person, you see these little tiny people. I mean, they're really, and not until they lock eyes with you do you realize how powerful they actually are. And they're not powerful until they do that. So I would sit in the living room in the dark. They would stand on the porch a few feet away, and we would work back and forth together telepathically. And that's how the book was written.
Wow.
And
Well,
that's how we are now. I mean, they were here, as I say, I was with people with them a few weeks ago. And it wasn't a sit down face to face by any means, but it was definitely contact. It was very complex and a little scary and very fruitful for everybody involved, including them, I'm sure.
Well, you also have an implant, Whitley, that is assisting you in
Yeah.
that connection.
Okay,
It's,
I'll tell you a little bit about the implant.
yeah, please.
It was put in my ear. I'm feeling it right now in May of 1989. And it was not put in by anything that looks like an alien. It was done by two people. Uh, I heard it was a May night, it was warm, the windows were open in the cabin that we had used to have in upstate New York. I lost it thanks to going broke because of the media beating me up so much. People stopped buying my books. But anyway, I'm lying there, Annie's just falling asleep, and I'm reading. And suddenly I hear crunching of gravel in the driveway and no lights, no car lights. And I think, not good, because also we have a big, heavy gate. So it was not easy to get in there. This was definitely an intrusion. Now, I have under the bed a big shotgun, and in the table beside the bed, a pistol, not for the visitors, whom I'm very much, at that point, was very much reconciled with, but for the danger of just what I thought was happening. Also, the light, there's a bank of switches on the wall, and I could flip them, and floodlights will go on all around the house. So I lean over, starting to flip those lights, and the next thing I know, I see two people standing at the foot of the bed, a man and a woman. Before I can make any further move, they're beside me. They have me lying on my side, facing Anne. I can't see anymore. I can't move a muscle. There's powerful hands pushing my head down into the pillow, and the woman's voice is speaking to me very sweetly and very gently. Then it ends. There's a flash of light and a lot of crashing in the woods. I jump out of bed, grab the pistol, and go running through the house looking for a point of entry. I don't find one, and the alarm system is still on. So I come out back sitting on the side of the bed, and I said to myself, by this time, I know all about things like lucid dreams, of course. If that was a lucid dream, Strieber, you really have lucid dreams. The next morning, I tell Anne about it. I go out to the car to drive out and get the paper because we live in a very rural area and I like to read the paper every morning. And incredibly, even though the alarm system is still armed, the garage door is wide open and it's on the system. So I realized this was real. Somebody did come in here. And not only that, they had the ability to suppress the alarm system and leave the darn door open. So I call the alarm guy. He comes over and he tests this switch and he says, Whitley, there's a huge magnetic field here. That's why this door is not tripping. It's still magnetized, even though they're 3 feet apart. And he said, my magnets can't do that. There's something else going on here. So all I could do was change out the magnets. But you see, then I knew. I didn't know what had happened, but then the next day, my ear starts hurting. So I feel it, and there's this thing there. And I think I knew Roger Lear at the time, who was a doctor who was taking out implants in here in California. And so I say to Anne, they've put an implant in my ear. I've got to get it out. She said, no, you don't do that. We're going to figure out what it does. Roger's making a mistake taking these implants out. We need to figure out what they're for. And so I said, well, I don't want to be tracked. She says, nobody's tracking you. That's not what it's for. What you do is you go down to the 7-Eleven to get the paper. You live a normal life. If they're tracking you, they're going to turn it off in a week because you're not interesting, Whitley. I'm sorry, I love you, but you're not a big adventurer at all. She was right about that. Years pass. Nothing happens. It turns on every once in a while. It turns bright. My ear turns bright red and it starts making a humming noise and stuff. So I know it's doing something, but what? I meet a doctor in Texas after we've lost the cabin. We moved down to this little condo we have down there. It was the last place we have. Next step is the street. So we're there. And I meet this doctor and I mention it to him, not as an implant, and he says, oh, it's a little cyst. And I trick Annie. I say, oh, I'd like to get it removed. And before she can say anything, he says, sure, come over to my office tomorrow morning and I'll pop it out. She says, all right, at home. All right, Whitley, you have one chance and you have to promise me never again, never again. He tries to take it out. He cuts a little incision. There's never a scar there before, by the way. They didn't leave a scar when they put it in. He cuts a little incision, and after a few seconds, the thing goes down into my earlobe. And on its own, at this point, he knows I've written communion. He realizes this isn't a cyst. This is an alien implant. I'm trying to take an alien implant out of this guy. Goodbye. He says, well, Mr. Whitley, I'd have to cut your ear off to get it. I'm sewing up and pulling out. And so he just puts a stitch in it and pulls out. 2 days later, a burning sensation. It comes back up to where it is. Years pass still with no idea of how it works. And he passes. And suddenly a slit opens up in my right eye that I can see. In fact, right now, looking against a bright surface, there's words racing past in the slit, too fast for me to read them. But those words I've learned since in a situation, another situation, draw memories up from my own mind. And they then can be used in the foreground of my mind in my work. And, we file an awful lot away in our minds. And this thing, it's an absolutely brilliant research tool, is what it is. I told friends about it because I don't want to get into it because it's too much, because we're a little low on time.
Yeah.
A doctor who works in the secret side of this thing wanted me to get a CT scan of it. And 2 nights before the CT scan was scheduled, which did beautifully, the scan is perfect, it shows it without question. 2 men showed up at the apartment, and I recognized one of them because I had seen him before in unusual contexts. And he says, we would like to explain how the implant works. And they explain what I just told you, and a little more about how it works with synchronicities and things. And a very sophisticated thing, obviously. And he mentions it was invented by a man named, remember, 2 people put it in, a man invented it and called him Konstantin Rodov. And so they leave, and of course, I don't know who this is, so I immediately Google it. And it turns out it's a man called Konstantin Rodov. And who was he? He was the world's leading expert on electronic voice phenomena and electronic communication between the living and the dead. So I start telling my friends about this. Incredibly, one friend says, well, I have that same slit in my eye. I've had it for years. This friend is one of the world's leading experts on the work of Konstantin Rodov. So this implant, when I touch this, I am touching technology that was created on the other side of the human world by someone who was once on this side. And this is not an alien implant. This communicates with our own dead, including my wife.
This is so Whitley, thank you. Wow, Scott. This is just,
Yeah, no,
I mean,
it's extraordinary. And we are going to come back to more Whitley. My
Well,
wife
yes.
passed away 12 years ago, Whitley, so I am eager to hear more about you and Anne and her passing. I want to share a couple of important things with the audience. This is the book. Of course, Whitley's written several books, but this is kind of the one that was the Bible of opening the door to understanding and having a deeper understanding of connection to beings other than our own species and from another world. And many of you probably recognize the book and have read the book. And I also we're going to come back to Whitley. We're going to have an Omoshire song in a moment. But I also, people are asking how they can learn more about Whitley. His website is unknowncountry.com. Unknowncountry.com. And that's where you can get his books. And you can also get his podcast. He has an extraordinary podcast that he does called Dreamland. And really, you can learn all about what he's doing. You can subscribe so that you can receive. And he does a weekly podcast, weekly. So he's active. And Whitley, I'm stunned by some of your stories. And I want to come back, but we are way overdue for an Overture song. And that would be a good chance for us to digest. Yes,
Okay.
Alan.
Yeah.
No, Whitley has to leave around 7, so we'll just do and then have Whitley wrap up with all the incredible things he's been
Okay.
talking about.
Okay. All right. Yeah, and as long as you can stay with us, Whitley, we're fascinated. And everybody, we still have Ashleigh and Cam and John Martin. So it's going to be a rich night. But to digest, here is our beloved Omar Shah.
Didn't know what time it was, the lights were low. I leaned back on my radio. Some cat was laying down some rock and roll. Look at me say. Then the loud side didn't seem to fade. Came back like a slow voice on the wave of fade. That was no DJ, that was cosmic hazy jive. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'd blow our minds. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He's told us not to blow it, cause he knows it won't worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it, let all the children lose it, let the children boogie down. Well, I had to phone someone, so I clicked on you. Hey, that's far out, so you heard him too. Switch on the TV, we may pick him up on channel 2. Look out your window, I can see his light. If we can sparkle, he may land tonight. Don't tell your papa, cause he'll get us locked up in fright. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'll blow our mind. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it, cause he thinks it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it, let all the children use it, let all the children boogie starman waiting in the sky. He'd like to come and meet us, but he thinks he'll blow our mind. There's a starman waiting in the sky. He told us not to blow it, cause he thinks it's all worthwhile. He told me, let the children lose it, let all the children use it, let the children boogie down.
We go to gallery view where we all can twinkle this wonderful, 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 perfect selection. You always have the most amazing selections, Omashar, that fit the theme.
I know that one just came out of left field. It only took me forever to transcribe and learn, but it just said, play it tonight. Tonight's the night. So
Beautiful.
there we are. Thank you.
Beautiful. And hey, I want to remind everybody that you can find all things Omashar on his website. And the best place to buy his music, his website is his name, omashar.com. And the best place to get his music is at Bandcamp. So if you go to omashar.bandcamp.com, that's where you can get his albums. Let's support him. He's a precious and essential part of the Global Peace Tribe and all the shows that we do. And he'll be back with a closing song for us tonight. All right, we are going to introduce Ashley and Cam in a moment, but since we only have a few more minutes that Whitley is available, Whitley, there's a lot of questions that have come in, but I certainly want for you to please kind of tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Anne, including after her passage, and how our connection to beloveds on the other side are part of this adventure.
Well, back in the 90s, Anne and I had a discussion that the first one who passed would not try to come back, if this was even possible, would not try to come back to the other one directly, but rather would go to friends. In January of 2015, Anne began insisting that I memorize a poem called Song of the Wandering Angus by W.B. Yeats. And I didn't know why, but she cried when I didn't take it seriously. And so I did memorize it, and it turned out to be very important. After she passed away that night, that same night, I was just devastated. I was sitting in the living room, almost unable to move. I was so sad. Suddenly the phone rings, and it's a friend of Anne's. No one knew she had passed away yet. And the friend says, Whitley, I just heard, they all knew she was sick, of course. I just heard Anne's voice saying that I should call you. And I thought, oh, no. I said, she just passed away, honey, at 7:15. And we talked for a moment, and she cried, and I cried. And that happened again and again over the next couple of weeks until finally I remembered the conversation back in the 90s. I thought, my God, Anne is coming back to friends, just like we agreed. And then I remembered, well, wait a minute, that poem has something to do with all of this. And the next thing I knew, I didn't know what it was. The next thing I knew, I'd go to the Ozark Mountain UFO conference, and my automatic cameras, surveillance cameras, start popping off with this big moth flying back and forth right in front of the camera. What is going on? Moths don't do that. And I think to myself, I show this thing to people at the conference, and they say, it's no ordinary moth. There's something going on, Whitley. I didn't know what it was until I remembered the poem. I went out to the hazelwood because a fire was in my head, and cut and peeled a hazel wand and hooked a berry to a thread. When white moths were on the wing and the moth-like stars were flickering out, I dropped the berry in a stream and caught a little silver trout. When I laid it on the floor, something rustled on the floor, and someone called me by my name. It had become a glimmering girl who called me by my name and faded through the brightening air. I am old with wandering in hollow lands and hilly lands, but I will find where she has gone and kiss her lips and take her hands and walk in long dappled grass till time and taste the apples of the moon, the silver apples of the moon, the golden apples of the sun, till time and times are done. The White Moth is also the name of her favorite short story by me, which is about an old woman discovering she is dead. And the white moth then became Anne's avatar. She had made me memorize the poem months before anyone knew she was going to die, because she already knew she would create an avatar in this world. And since then, the white moth has appeared in thousands of lives, and Anne is a fabulous teacher. So if the white moth appears in your life, sit down, open your mind, put your attention on your body, let your mind open, and you will have someone wonderful in your life for at least a little while. I think that's where we should stop.
Beautiful. Whitley, what you've done tonight is weave the UFO, ET, abduction with a deep mystical understanding of who human beings are. I mean, you've connected these dots in a new way, for me anyway. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, remember, live in joy, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how hard it gets.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Whitley, for being with us. And
thank you, Scott. It's a joy to have been asked.
Look forward to more. And definitely a reminder, everybody, to go to, again, Whitley's website, which is unknowncountry.com. Unknowncountry.com. That's where you can find all things Whitley. And I strongly encourage you to subscribe. So much so we can learn from this man. Next time, Alan, I think we're gonna let's just have Whitley because there's so much. Definitely.
When his new book comes out, his
book. Just to have me. This is about a lot of people. It's about everybody, and I know some of the people who are going to be speaking next, and you're in for a real treat.
Well, thank you. Bringing them up just so people can we can have everybody together here for a moment. And yet what we're looking at are 6 people that have all had very unique experiences with the other side. And so we're going to meet Ashley and Cam and hear back from John. Whitley, God bless you. Thank you so much.
You, Scott.
Thanks, Whitley. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Well, before we hear your stories, I just want to open it up to Cam and Ashley. I know this was your first experience with Whitley. John, what are some of the things that stood out for each of you and what you heard tonight?
Go ahead.
Should I go? I
go.
relate with a ton of what he shared when he expressed how the veil gets thin. I think that's a great indicator that you have potential to connect interdimensionally and extraterrestrially. So that's something I experienced through my contact. The veil got very thin. Loved ones started to come in and around, and that later led to even more expansion.
Well, since we're on you and you've started, go ahead and share with us your story then, Ashley. Let's just go ahead right with that.
Okay. I'll be as brief as possible. So I've always been in tune. I've always been a little psychic, a little bit aware, but I was not what I would consider awakened until my adult life. I had some indications that something was coming. I started hearing voices. I started getting signs, synchronicities. The loved ones were coming through more than they ever had before. I was seeing interdimensionals, so elementals, fae. I used to play with them as a child. A lot of that stuff started amping up. And then I was told through my mind, by the guides, by the guardians, by some of these beings I was working with, that something was coming and I needed to prepare. So I started preparing. And then in 2016, I had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening and my whole life changed. After that, I started experiencing a ton of interdimensional and galactic cosmic contact. They taught me a lot about the human body, the capabilities that we have yet to tap into through our genetics. And I've been on this journey ever since. My body went through a ton of physical transformations. At the time that I was receiving some of this cosmic contact, I broke out in this extreme rash. They thought I had lupus. They thought I had an autoimmune. It was from the frequencies I was tapping into. And that led me to deeper understanding of our nervous system and how we have a little bit of work to do to acclimate with some of the energies that these cosmic beings carry. It can actually shock our physical system. So, foundation of my work is caring for the nervous system, awakening the heart, moving out of the mind and into the physical body, so that we're feeling a more subtleness in the energy fields. So we're moving out of the mind, which is easily manipulated, and we're moving into the intelligence of the heart, which is our direct connection to source. So through my contact with some of these ETs, they've helped me understand the human body better, the systems, how we can use them to our advantage, and how they've been used against us.
Did you actually have a one-to-one contact with an ET?
In dream state, yes. I actually, and then I've actually seen UFOs. I sent a friend of mine, his name's Roderick. He has like a show where he discusses this stuff, some of the video footage that I got. So around that time, I lived on the 4th floor and I had this odd looking cloud and I was hearing things and I was just requesting confirmation just to affirm I was not going crazy. And it kept coming. I mean, that was one that happened. I actually caught footage of it. I don't have it with me, but I could probably dig it out and find it. And then a lot of stuff in dream state. And then just simple, easy things like I'll be resting in my bed. Next thing you know, I'll see something at the end of my bed. 2 weeks ago, I had this being with these really interesting looking teeth at the end of my bed. It did not have an emotional body. So it had no sense of emotion. There was no connection, but it had curiosity. That was an interdimensional being that would have fed on me, my light, my essence, and dream state. So a lot of stuff like that happened for me. And I'm sure there's others who are experiencing some of these subtle shifts in their perception and awareness. But when we understand, you are a creator within yourself, you can claim, command, and own your sovereignty. Those things can't really hurt you. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And to this day, I'm in contact with different ETs and forces, some of which are more neutral. They stand for balance. And then others are more for where we're heading through our evolution. One thing that Whitley shared about the being and what I picked up from that when they took him through that experience was that they were very over-mentalized. They're very over-mental. So not to have compassion and sense the subtle forces of the body. And I would consider that like a gray or some subspecies of a gray that has lost that aspect of itself. And there are those as well, and they're curious about us and where humanity's headed. So that's my story. That's my share.
I think they're breeding, they're taking our genetics because they did lose that emotionality, and they're taking it back in developing a hybrid race with our ability to feel, because it's in our genetics. So I think you're absolutely right.
I have a different take on it.
Well, tell me what your take is.
I believe that they're actually the future version of us. If humanity does not get in alignment with the natural laws, that the defragmentation of our genetics and our DNA, we end up being what they are now.
Right. That's good. Well, Bashar says something like that, where you can take a divergent path where we could reclaim in the future our emotionality and combine it with the great intelligence. So who knows? I mean, everyone has their own version.
Yeah.
But thank you for sharing your story. I didn't know that was what happened to you and your awakening. Beautiful.
We're definitely going to have you stay on the show tonight, Ashley, because I've got some questions for you. But I want to introduce Cam, and actually, Ellen, I'll let you introduce him because he's the guest that you suggested.
Well, I know he has a long bio here, but I met him because he's on this consciousness call we do once a week, and he talked about his CE5s that he developed after being with Stephen Greer and then deciding to kind of go out and do it on his own, in a sense, out in San Diego in the wilderness and calling in some beautiful experiences and craft and things and objects in the sky. So somehow, Cam, you've been able to tap into that vibration where they're just showing up when you do your close encounters of the fifth kind. Do you want to talk about that and some of your experiences with all that?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you, Alan. I appreciate that. So my deepest experience happened actually during the Dr. Stephen Greer retreat. So leading up to that, real quick, I was meditating every day for quite a while, starting in January 2009. That's when I found out just before that about Dr. Stephen Greer, and I wasn't even interested in ETs or meditation or any of that. I was actually into quantum mechanics and quantum physics, and I was studying about Nikola Tesla and free energy. And I found out about Dr. Greer through the Orion project, which he was trying to fund a free energy lab. And then I was thinking, what is all this other stuff he's involved in? And then I just got obsessed, and I had to watch everything I could find on Dr. Greer, got all his books, and I had to start meditating and science of consciousness. I just got into all of it. And I had this voice that came to me during a meditation that told me that I would have to prepare deeply before I would go on a Dr. Stephen Greer retreat. And I would know I'd have an epiphany when I was ready to go on it. And it actually took 5 years before I had the epiphany. So I meditated over 90 minutes a day for 5 years. And I did C5 alone for those 5 years. And then I went on the retreat in 2015 when I had that epiphany. And the third night, which is very interesting because the next time that I had an out-of-body experience, it also was a third night of a retreat. So for me, it seems that it takes 3 nights for me to actually raise my frequency high enough in order to have an experience like that. Now, I call it an out-of-body experience because it seems like that's what it was. I'm still not 100% sure, because since then I've researched about out-of-body experiences, and they aren't typically at all like what I experienced. Usually people are completely in control when they have an out-of-body experience. I wasn't. It was like I was taken. So what had happened was that I was doing one of my longest meditations of the day. During the retreat, I was meditating 5 hours a day. I took it very, very seriously. And so on the third evening before dinner, I went down and had my meditation. And the next thing I knew, I was floating above my body, above the bed, against the ceiling. And then I shot right out of the ceiling. And next thing I knew, I was being taken and flying through the trees. And this is in Colorado, by the way. It's near Mesa Verde. And this was in June of 2015. And I'm flying between the trees, and it was as real as this is, if not more real than being awake. Nothing like being in a dream. And so everything was so vivid, and to the point where I actually had binocular vision, so I could slow things down and I could zoom in on the leaves of the trees that I was flying by. It was just magnificent, you know. And so after a while, I fly back to where there was this huge meadow down below where we were staying at this retreat. And next thing you know, I was standing in the meadow. To the left of me, there was this flat cement area. That's where we had all our chairs. We would do CE5 every night under the stars at that location. And so I look over there, and I'm told to look to my right. And I look to my right, and there is a flying saucer right there. But it didn't look anything like I'd seen in the movies or in pictures, or it looked like liquid metal. in a way. It was glistening in the moonlight, and it was green like an emerald. It had no rivets, no seams at all whatsoever. It just looked like a big jewel. And the next thing I knew, I was sucked right into it, and I was inside of this craft. And in front of me, there was the center of the craft, and there was a big column that went up and down the center of the craft. And then there was this, what kind of seemed like a desk kind of table that went around the column. That was a big circular table where it looked like people would sit. And on the other side, there was this being, and its back was facing me, so I couldn't see its face. I didn't know what it was. And Dr. Greer told us that if we had a very special meditation and we had a vision or something like that, we might have a being that might come to us and is assigned to us. And when they do that, we should tell them our name and that we come in peace and we are at the highest vibration of love and would like to learn from them. And so that's what I told this being, whatever it was. And it didn't say anything, and it just started slowly turning towards me. And then what was really interesting is when it went sideways, I noticed that it had a beak, like a bird beak. And then when he faced me, he told me that, let me show you. And it was this deep, deep voice. It was telepathy, and it was just booming, let me show you. And then next thing you know, I'm outside standing in the meadow where I was. I looked to my right, UFO's gone. I looked to my left where all the chairs were in the circle on the cement slab. And there's this light that started, and it started in every single chair, and then it started spinning around counterclockwise. And then all of a sudden, the light turned into this huge pyramid. That was a pyramid of light that was spinning counterclockwise. And then this beam shot out the capstone out the top out into space. And then next thing I knew, I flew into the middle of the pyramid and flew straight out the top of the capstone out into space. And so now I'm in space and I'm just being taken for a ride. Like I said, I had no control over this. So I'm being brought down to some planet. It's not Earth. It's some other planet that I've never seen anything like. It's in our solar system. And all of a sudden, I see these things growing up that kind of look like giant mushroom shapes, weird mushroom shapes, but I didn't know what they were. And then the booming voice came into my head again. And he said, my name is Thoth. So Thoth. And he said that I'm here to show you the technology that you've been wanting to download, that you've been asking for years. Because when I was back into quantum mechanics and into Nikola Tesla, and I found out about free energy devices and so forth, I was obsessed with it. And I actually spent money and funded a quantum physicist trying to create a free energy device myself. And but then I heard about other technology that's even beyond that, like atomic replication printing. And so he said, this is atomic replication printing. This is how buildings will be created. This technology exists. And everything will be created straight out of the 0 point. And you've been asking about this type of technology, and I'm showing it to you. These are buildings that are being created, and buildings in the future don't have any right angles. They're all curved. And I thought that was really neat. And so then next thing you know, I'm being pulled up from this planet and back out into space again. And then the coolest part of this happened. I saw something that I was coming closer and closer to that I couldn't tell really what it was at first. And then it looked like an opening. And next thing I knew, I went inside it, and it was a wormhole, but it was the most beautiful, and nothing that I've ever seen in a movie ever comes close to this. It was like a circular rainbow as I was going through it. And it was, the colors were so vibrant and so beautiful. I had the binocular vision, as I said before, so I could zoom in almost like to the pixels. It was like I could zoom in so far and I could slow it down that the colors were actually little tiny geometric shapes, and they're all different colors, these little geometric shapes. And then I would zoom back out and it would speed up again. It would spin in a counterclockwise spin. And so I was just mesmerized going through this beautiful wormhole. But then the crazy part happened. I came out of it, and then my memory got completely wiped clean. I had no memory of myself, Earth, my life, any of it, no past lives, nothing. And all of a sudden, I became one with everything. That's all I knew, is that I was the one. And all I saw was this blue grid. It was a blue like lapis lazuli, which is that gem, that stone, a very beautiful blue. And when I zoomed in on the lines of the grid, it looks like it was alive. And I could feel it's me and that I'm alive. And it looked like liquid lightning that was shooting, across. And the most amazing part of this is that the only feeling that I felt was pure love and bliss beyond human comprehension. And so I felt like I was floating and I was just a part of this for, it could have been hundreds or thousands of years, because the time was not like we have time here. It wasn't linear. And so eventually the grid actually turned into a pyramid. So it was, I was being shown, of course, the symbolism of pyramids, obviously was part of it. And so I came closer and closer as the pyramid got bigger and bigger, where the blue grid turned into it. And I went into the pyramid, and then all of a sudden everything went black. And this was very strange, because then all of a sudden I started getting my memories started coming back. This person, Cam, started coming back to me. And I was thinking, oh my God, who is this Cam person? What is this all about? And I was just the universe. I was the one. And then I felt like something was terribly wrong, because I could start feeling my body. And when I opened my eyes, I was bouncing up and down on the bed. I was in convulsions. I had stopped breathing. And so I was hyperventilating and convulsing, and I was trying to catch my breath. And I was freaking out because I'm trying to wrap my head around what just happened, but then I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my body and what's wrong with me. And then after that subsided, thankfully, all of this energy rushed into my body, and I felt like I was being electrocuted. And before this time, I had never had any Shakti or Kundalini experience. So the closest thing that I could even think of in my life that I've ever experienced like this was when I was attacked by a man-o-war jellyfish when I was surfing in Mazatlan, Mexico, when I was 20 years old. And so it's this electricity that was just shooting through my body. And that was the closest thing I've ever felt to it. And it felt like it was coming out my fingers and coming out my toes. And I'm thinking, what's happening to me? What's going on now? And that eventually started subsiding. And when that subsided, it was the strangest feeling. It felt like when you sleep on your arm and you cut off the circulation, and then all the blood rushes back into your arm, and it feels like thousands of needles when all the nerve endings, start to have feeling again in your arm. My whole body felt like that, almost as if the blood was rushing back into my body. And when that subsided, the most beautiful feeling I've ever felt came back into me. And that was that pure love and bliss beyond human comprehension. That just came rushing back into me. And then I couldn't stop laughing. I had all of this love and bliss just bursting at the seams. And I was laughing for probably 30, 45 seconds, which is a long time to laugh, and felt forever. And then that subsided, and then I was trying to figure out what week is it? What day is it? So I had to look at my phone. And when I got so good at meditation, I had no idea how long I would be under. I wouldn't put an alarm or something like that. And so I would write down the time before I went into meditation. And so it was 51 minutes it had been. And I said, okay, well, it's not next week, or, it was only 51 minutes. And wow, I was trying to wrap my head around what happened. And so after doing so for quite some time, I said, okay, well, gosh, everybody's eating dinner. I guess I need to go down to eat dinner. But I went down and I sat at a table by myself. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I had a really hard time speaking and also walking after that. I was very out of balance. And when I came out of my room, actually, there was this wonderful lady, Wendy, who I hadn't really spoken to, but she always sat right next to Dr. Greer. She must have been real special to him. And she looked at me and she said, "Did you have an out of body experience just now?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, how did you know?" And he said, "Well, I've had them before, and I could tell." And she said, "You be very, very careful when you go down the stairs, because I was on the second floor. You could fall and hurt yourself." So she knew exactly, what to tell me, and it was just synchronicity. I hadn't run into her. I didn't even know she was staying on that floor, and that the fact she came out right at that time to tell me that was amazing synchronicity. And so over time after that experience, I researched and researched and researched near-death experiences and all these things to try to figure out what happened to me. And the one thing about crossing over the wormhole was so incredible is that I came across what's called the Rainbow Bridge. And as soon as I came across that, and this was years later, I said, that's it. That's what I experienced. I crossed over. That was the Rainbow Bridge. And where I went was Nirvana. And the Rainbow Bridge is what's interesting is that it only talks about how dogs typically cross over, or animals, people's pets, and psychics. People have hired psychics to speak to their pets when they're about to cross over. It's usually dogs, and the dogs tell them that they're crossing the Rainbow Bridge. And there's a poem about it as well. And I couldn't find anything about humans, experiencing this, but I'm sure someone has out there. But I couldn't find it. But I was so thrilled that I put the pieces of the puzzle together with that. So that was that experience.
Wow. Beautiful. I'm going to bring our other guests on. That was an amazing experience, Cam. Thank you so much for sharing it. And, one of the comments from our audience, Susan Bloomquist wrote, "People who have these experiences look healthy and embodied." And I want to go there for a moment because, as Cam explained, before having this amazing experience, 5 years of meditation, 90 minutes a day, raising his vibration. Sean Martin playing beautiful classical music, raising his vibration. Ashley talking about her preparation. So I'd love to just kind of hear from each of you about, do you think that that's a really big part of it, is like raising our vibration so that we can step into a higher vibration experience, and that after being in such a high vibe thing, look at what happened to when you came back into your body.
Mm.
That was how I actually began my journey. I had dinner with President Carter, and when you're in the presence of a very deep soul like that, it's a very life-changing event. It's almost like when Carlos Castaneda would be hit in the center of his back by Don Juan, and it shifted his reality. And I had that feeling with President Carter, and he and I spoke of UFOs and his experience, and I related my experience. This was over dinner in Spain, and when I came back home, I meditated on that idea for a very long time, And I incorporated that wonderful. I've had many encounters and experiences with President Carter. He loves guitar music, and that's how we became friends. But I used that experience, and then Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where music was used as a communication tool, and I put those two ideas together. And I went out on my deck and I began playing my guitar, music that I've loved my whole life. And I've been playing guitar for 50 years now. So I was playing on my deck, and I just began projecting positive thought and love into the universe. And I just thought maybe perhaps I could have some kind of connection with our larger family throughout the universe. And 2 or 3 sessions went by, and I just kept doing this practice. And he's passed away now, my dog Bodie, but he was with me all these years. And so I'd walk him out, and I was walking back into the house, and I looked up, and there was a purple plasma craft with a pink ring that was rotating around the bottom third of the bell, sitting about 50 feet above our home. And it was absolutely astounding. And it was completely silent. And I ran in and I got Karen, and she came out, and she was looking at it with me, and it just stayed there. It just had this beautiful feminine energy to it, and it slowly just went away. And so I just kept doing that same idea, and I kept playing my music and sending who I am. I would introduce myself. This is John Martin. I'm a guitarist, and I'd say, people that were important to me that are also important. I've done this over the years. Whitley Strieber, he wrote the foreword to my book, and I'm so thankful for that. And I think historically we're going to see, when we have disclosure, Whitley Strieber is going to be a person that has brought many people to this subject, and he will be recognized for that, and he should be. You can see how important Whitley is. Everyone here, it's an honor to be with all of you. But so I kept playing my guitar, and I went back out, and then there were 4 craft in a row, 1 red and 3 gray, and they were just spinning silently over my courtyard. It was just absolutely incredible. I ran in to get my phone. I came back out, and they took off, so I didn't get them on film. But I just thought, wow, this is really working. This is amazing. And so I kept playing, and just a few days later, the really big ones came. It was in the middle of the day, and I was walking my dog back in, and right over the same courtyard, a cross and a crescent-shaped craft. They were at a 45-degree angle, and they're completely silent. And if you look behind Whitley, there was a crop circle, and had crescents. And I've found out over the years, cross and crescent are very often portrayed in crop circles. And there was a little a star in the center of the one that Whitley had behind him, and they made a perfect star cloud for me at my park. It's a long story, but I ran in and got my camera, and I was fumbling with it, and in my mind they said, please don't take our picture. We'll give something to you that you can take a picture of. And so I honored that. I didn't run around the building like you would expect and try to photograph them. I just honored that, and it was just such a moving experience that I just kind of sat there and thought about it. And a few days later, directly over my courtyard, this perfect heart-shaped cloud was made right in the exact same spot as the cross and crescent. And so I've been doing this work now for over a decade, and like Cam,
Little Sippers was definitely not born.
I consider this my own type of meditation, Scott, and I've been doing this. I do it every day through my music, and I make it a daily practice to go. There's a park directly next door, and I bring my cameras and I speak with our star family. When I'm outside, I tell them, things going on in my life, and I can feel their beautiful energy when I'm out there. I may not see them, but I can feel it, and they speak to me in that way. They've come through portals. I've had beautiful higher dimensional beings. You'll see that in the video. That is barely in our dimension. I've had other. Jonathan Reed's a very dear friend of mine, and I know you all know him, and he asked me if it'd be okay if Freddie came to see me, and I said, sure, that'd be fine. Jonathan and I have been friends for many years. And Karen and I went down to Seaside, and we had a beautiful day at the beach and a nice dinner, and we were going to bed, and it was very quiet. And we were just laying in bed, and we heard a hiccup right next to the bed, and Karen said, was that a hiccup? And so I got on and I knew who it was, and I got on the computer the next day, and I wrote to Jonathan. I said, does Freddie hiccup? And they all went, yay, and they all got excited because he's come a few different times. So it's all is very subtle, as Ashley was saying. There's a subtlety to it, and when you recognize subtlety, I hear my parents, they're both passed. They're with me often, and friends that have passed, and I can hear them, and they advise me. I'm working on 2 incredibly challenging projects right now, and I've had so much help from people here like Scott and people on the other side that have given me a lot of help. And so the reason I'm doing all of this is because I think we all can do it. And I think if we all will just take the time and effort to share who we are with the universe, go outside, introduce yourself, as Cam said. I always do that. And they're very civil. I think what Whitley went through, I was so saddened by that. And I read his book many, many years ago. And I think they've learned from their experiences with us, that's a violation. You should not do that. And so I think Whitley is a trailblazer, and he's taken some, a lot of difficult, a lot of things that have happened to him that I've never had any kind of experience like that. And so I honor him doubly for that. But anyway, I'm a musician. I play more than I talk, but it's just always an honor to be here, Scott, and thank you for having me.
Well, thank you. Thank you, John. Just one question for Ashley, John, and Cam is that Whitley's story is such a contrast, and maybe these 3 people, not to compare, were already at a vibration of that harmony, and perhaps he had to will himself to that level in order to meet those beings on an even playing field. I don't know. I'm just thinking you guys had these joyful experiences, and Whitley had a really hard time, but he willed himself to break through that anger and trauma to get to that level. I don't know. What do you guys think? Ash?
I think it's both. Although I had that joyful experience, I've also had some really challenging experiences with some of the interdimensional beings that exist beyond the veil. And I know there's others that can relate with that have experienced a spiritual awakening. They might not have the context for it, but challenging things come around them, try to get into them. It's not all bliss state. And part of that is the tools, the resources, the knowledge that you have, and then where you currently are within your biology, like where your body is in the ascension process. So when I think someone asked about, being a high vibration, yes, but key is embodiment. bringing that into the body, bringing it into the bones, into the muscles, into all the organs, reclaiming all systems on a higher vibration. That's the key.
Beautiful.
Do you have tools to help people with that, Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, when Cam shared his story about meditation, meditation is one of the best things you can do for yourself. And then you have the gift of your senses, your smell, your taste, your sight, what you hear, moving out of your mind and into your body. Your mind can be very easily influenced by energies and frequencies around you. When you can control your mind and come into your body, you can navigate some of the challenges, some of what you can't see, but is within and around you.
Beautiful.
There's a question from Dr. Laura. She asks, Ashley, what do you do when the challenging beings try to come into your field?
So I used to play the part of the spiritual warrior and, shield them off and fight them off. But I realized that we don't even need to do that. You just need to hold your sovereignty. And this happens to me a lot. It took a while to figure it out. I'll notice my body. So my front, my back, the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And then I'll connect with my breath. Your breath is an extremely powerful tool. If you could imagine your breath has an intelligence of its own, filling you up with the divine light that is a protective force. And then I notice my skin. I secure my field. And I say, what is mine is mine. What is theirs is theirs. I hold my connection with source through intent and awareness of my physical body. And then you might even see or notice the energy shifts around you as you command your sovereignty.
Great. Hey, Cam, was your life permanently changed when you came out of that experience? I mean, were you a totally different being on this new vibration?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What was very interesting was that
Little
the
Sippers was
next,
definitely not born.
oh, I'm sorry, there's somebody else that was talking. The next few days, I was able to have lunch with Emily Greer, which is Dr. Stephen Greer's wife. She took a liking to me after hearing the story because that night after dinner, I shared my experience with everyone, which was very interesting because when I was done sharing the experience, what can happen, this is a phenomenon that happens sometimes, and some of you probably have heard of this or has experienced it, is when you're outside in the field and doing this type of work, if they're really, really close and you can feel when they're extremely close, they all of a sudden, all of the insects, all the noise, especially when you're out in the boonies like we were, it just went completely silent. All the frogs, insects, everything just stopped. And so when I finished telling my experience, that's what happened. And about 10 seconds later, after hearing absolutely nothing, Dr. Greer said, okay, I think we'll take a break. And then he came running over to me. Now, Dr. Greer, he's 6'5". He's huge, and he's very serious a lot of the times. And I've seen his really wonderful soft side too, especially when you're out on a retreat with him doing C5. And this is unlike him. He was like a child. He came running over to me and he kept asking me questions. Where do you think you went? This is, very powerful. I want to know where you went. I want to know what it means and so forth. And so after that, there was this lady that came over to me, and I want to share this real quick, if you don't mind. She was crying and she said, please have lunch with me tomorrow. And I said, absolutely, of course I will. And so the next day, we would wake up at 11 a.m. or something because we would stay up till 2 a.m. I went down and she was waiting for me at the table, and she wanted to hear about why I came to that place in my life and all the work that I had done to get there. And so I explained everything, the 5 years of meditation and everything. And then my epiphany, which I didn't mention earlier, was that I had completely deleted all fear of death. I got to a point where I was ready to go. I was ready to surrender completely. I was ready to come to on this retreat. And if I got taken and I never came back, and some people may think that's selfish because I have 3 children, but I was just in that place at that time, and I was just so deep into surrender. And when I told her that, she started crying, and I said, "What did I say?" And she then told me that she came from extreme wealth. She's never had to work a day in her life. She's been meditating almost 40 years. And she had gone to every guru in India because there was, no budget or anything. And that she said no one had ever taught her what you just taught me. And I had to know why I'd never had an experience like you had. And it was the most humbling feeling in my life when she told me this, because it shows that any of us can experience something like this. We're all capable. I don't really believe that. I mean, there's some people who come here, of course, and they're, a higher frequency, and they might have psychic abilities from the get-go and all that, of course, and there may be star seeds and all of that, of course, but I think we are all absolutely capable. And if we just raise our frequency, and getting back to what you were saying, Alan, and you were asking, I want to share something real quick, if you don't mind, if I take a little more time, if that's okay. I've never shared this with anybody in my life, not even anybody I've been in love with or anything. But since it was brought up earlier, the other experiences, of course, was that before I started meditation, before I found Dr. Greer and all of that, 2006 is when I started to awaken. The moment that I had my daughter in my hands when she was born. And I said, I've been very selfish. I don't know much about this world. I have to learn everything I can about this system that I'm going to raise my child in this world, and I don't know much about it. I was into making money and surfing, and that was my life. And so I learned about a lot of dark things first. Unfortunately, you have to kind of go through that. And what happened to me was I actually had these shadow beings that I saw them with my eyes wide open in my room, and I was paralyzed. So a lot of people have had that paralyzation when they're sleeping, and then they get woken up, but they typically don't see anything, or they can't open their eyes. But these shadow beings were all around me, and it was the scariest experience of my life. And I've surfed 25-foot waves, and almost drowned before, and I've never been that scared in my life. The fear, the level of fear, and they were so negative, these beings. And so what I told myself, that I could not allow myself to research that type of stuff, that I was going down that rabbit hole at that time anymore. And that's when I found Nikola Tesla, and the light just, and then I found Dr. Greer, and I found meditation and everything. And it was everything from that point on. It was just like a straight arrow going upward, ascending to a higher frequency. So with that said, there is something definitely to that, where we are on our level of frequency. And I look at it as you can actually scientifically quantify the lowest level of frequency being around the root chakra. If we're talking about chakras, is fear. It's mostly all centered around fear and subsets of fear, and then the highest frequency being love. And that love and bliss was the highest frequency that I experienced when I crossed over to that blue dimension, and that nirvana that I was in. And since I've had that experience, one of the most wonderful things about it is that I've been able to help people who are about to pass over. And very closely, I might get emotional, but was my father, who was atheist. And he had a heart attack, and I was with him the last 11 days. He was alive, and by the end, he was no longer an atheist, because I told him everything. And then my mom was passing last year, and she kept asking me, "Can you tell me about your experience again?" She kept wanting me to repeat the experience, to tell her. because she was afraid. She was afraid to die. And this was a long process of 3 years of her almost passing multiple times, and then being saved and kind of brought back. And yeah. So meditation, as you said, actually, it's I wish everyone would get into it and do it, and it is so powerful. So I think that I've taken up time.
No, Cam, first of all, thank you, everybody, for sharing so honestly, so beautifully, so vulnerably. And, there are many ways to raise our vibration. I want to acknowledge it's a real blessing to have a multidimensional experience, to experientially know that we're more than just this body. And some of us are blessed to have that experience. And I think it's just pure grace to have that experience and to know that we're not the body. And I know many of our audience members have had experiences that have informed them of that. But it's also important to look at all the different ways that we can raise the vibration. Meditation, obviously. And we're going to go to another wonderful way to raise the vibration, which is John Martin's music.
Yeah.
So, John, I just so love your music. And a little later, we'll see a video of you playing music and talking to your friends in the sky. But let's just start with dropping into the high vibration of John Martin and his classical guitar.
Thanks, Scott. This is actually a meditation for Whitley. I wrote this for him.
Go to gallery view. Let's just all send some love and appreciation to John.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
John, we've added a new segment of our show where we pray and take a moment of prayer. And you just played such beautiful music. And so if you'd be willing, I'm going to, tonight, instead of focusing on any particular people, of course, our beloved friends Piper Dellums and Davina Joy are two members of our Global Peace Tribe that are going through challenges right now. We've been raising money for them. But for tonight's prayer, I'm going to go to Gallery View and go into silence and just ask us to all, as we listen to John's music, to just send love to any individual that you know that's going through a challenging time, or to Gaza, or our friends that were impacted by the hurricane, whatever you want to send your love to. As you all know, I believe that maximum grace is a powerful prayer. And let's just have a few minutes of John music and our sending love out to the world in whatever way you feel so inspired. Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Maximum grace for all beings, including ourselves. Maximum grace. I do want to acknowledge the wonderful work that our good friend Danny Sheehan and New Paradigm Institute are doing. Of course, last week was Global Disclosure Day, which has kind of kicked off Alan and I doing multiple shows on the topic. And I'm going to bring Alan back up because I believe Alan has selected some segments that really stood out for him from last week.
Yeah, I mean, what we did tonight with these four amazing experiences is really the post-disclosure world. What Danny's doing is trying to get us up to speed and saying, there's a phenomena here. We have visitors, but no one's talking about why they are here. And I think it's what this last part of the conversation was about, getting humanity to raise its vibration to the next level of being so we can get over war and anger and hatred and all those things that have kept us a kind of third chakra and lower. And now we're here to meet the others on the playing field that they can meet us on. They're not going to come down to our level, but we have to go up to their level. So what Danny Sheehan did on the 20th was bring together a bunch of different speakers who address these pre-disclosure world. Let's just call it there's the post-disclosure world, which in a way we're living in, Scott. I mean, what we're talking about tonight is the post-disclosure world.
Yeah.
And the pre-disclosure world is just acknowledging that there's something there. We're sort of beyond that. But one of the people that was on the disclosure day was this guy, Ross Coulthard. Do you know Ross?
Yeah, I was very impressed with what he had to say. Is that one of the segments that you selected to show?
Yes, because I think he makes some really good points that we've been denied the truth. I mean, we've transcended the truth by acknowledging our own experiences, but most of the world is not the global peace tribe. Sorry about that, Scott. But
We're working on it.
But anyway, so Ross Coulthard, he's one of the cutting edge reporters. He interviewed David Grush for the first time anyone ever heard about him. He has a great interview with Gary Nolan. He's an Australian reporter, but somehow he got inside the phenomena. So I'm going to play this little segment of him on the Global Disclosure Day. So let's just pull this up. This is Ross, and this is sort of the end of his about 10-minute statement.
I can't remember where I saw it this week, but I think Congressman Jared Moskowitz was saying on the campaign trail that the one thing he's getting asked about the most on the campaign trail is the UAP cover-up. I think congressional representatives and senators are very slowly, oh so slowly, coming to the realization that for a large part of the public, but particularly for young voters who aren't daunted by the taboo and stigma and ridicule that's being directed at the subject, that just doesn't work on them. They have a wisdom of the crowd, and they've come to the conclusion there really is something to this UAP mystery. They want to know more. And if my inbox is any guide, I am exploding with emails from young people asking me what can they do to help, what can they do to play any kind of significant role in pushing the needle forward. And I say to them, contact New Paradigm Institute and get involved in the disclosure initiatives. Create citizen activism. Go out there and do what Jim Garrison and Danny Sheehan did 30 and 40 years ago during the Watergate and Iran-Contra hearings, and use citizen activism to make people aware of this issue. There is so much on the public record. We have statements from David Grush, Lou Elizondo, Chris Mellon, and what I can tell you is that there is a massive secret. Billions of dollars of US taxpayer money has been diverted, often illegally, probably criminally, and done through reprehensible and often immoral means to achieve a gain against foreign adversary potential rivals. And that's a tragedy. Wouldn't it be a tragedy if our first encounter with a non-human intelligence led to us acting offensively and aggressively against them? And that's what I understand is happening. I am told we, the American public, should be informed we are using high pulse microwave weapons against non-human craft. And we are bringing those craft down so that we can retrieve them and salvage the technology. God knows what we're doing to the alien beings inside those craft. I hope we treat them with respect. And why does this matter? It matters because at the heart of the US Constitution is a system of checks and balances. It's a beautiful document that stops tyrannical power. What the whole idea of the US Constitution was, it was enshrined in a moment in history when monarchs' tyrannical rule had got completely out of control. And so it recognized there needed to be a check on executive power. And fundamental to that system of checks and balances is congressional oversight. And that's not happening. And that's what people need to tell their congressional representatives they care about in this election. It's what people all over the world need to wake their governments up to as an issue. And what we don't realise is we've been played. We've had a huge wool pulled over our eyes by very clever people in disinformation who wanted us to treat the whole subject with ridicule. Whereas, in fact, there is a massive multi-billions, if not trillions of dollars of enterprise that has been done outside of the scrutiny of Congress, illegally, probably criminally. It's time for that to be redressed. And that's why global disclosure.
Sorry about the drag in the sound. Was that happening for you? There was a little.
Yeah, there's a lot of crackling in the sound. We could make out what he was saying, but it was a little awkward.
And also really gray boxed. If you do you have it optimized? If you do unoptimize it.
Unoptimize it. Okay, I'm going to unoptimize. I have another clip from Carl Nell, who was in the Army, and he's one of the people real inside. Ross Coulter's a reporter, so he's getting it secondhand. This guy, Carl Nell, was, I think, a colonel in the Army and had access to the inside knowledge. But what we're doing on this show, Scott, is talking about the inside of the phenomena and the outside of the phenomena. So these experiences are what's happening once you integrate the phenomena or know it's a reality. And then the externally, exo-reality is what the government and what Danny and everyone's trying to get people up to speed to know we're about to shift our realities. And there's still this huge resistance against, it's what the church did to Galileo and Copernicus. How can you say that the earth is not the center of the world? And guess what? It's not. There are other beings and other opportunities. I mean, in Elizondo's book, he goes through a lot of these changing paradigm moments. I'll show the Carl Nell, but let me just read this to you. Whether one believes in UFOs and they represent a threat to national security, or maybe UAPs, UFOs represent a new opportunity to our species, we are at a point where the reality of the UFO-UAP is upon us. I mean, it is the conversation. It is no longer laughed at, whispered at, giggled at. It will be and is the mainstream conversation.
I just want to give context so people know. You're reading from the book-selling book in America, written by Luis Elizondo, who's the amazing whistleblower, Danish. So just wanted to give that context.
No. Thank you for that. And actually, I'm going to hear him speak next week. But what's interesting? He said of this decade. So, there's this, and I think it has to do with what we were just talking about, vibration. Yeah. It has to do with this next level of being, of the human race. Okay, I'm going to show one other clip here about Carl Nell. I'll unoptimize the video, and now this guy is a big insider. I think I showed a clip of him on another show we did, but this is what he had to say to Danny Sheehan and everyone else.
Non-human intelligence exists. Non-human intelligence has been interacting with humanity on this planet. This interaction is ongoing and it's not new. And there is zero doubt. But you already knew that. So how do we go about convincing other people that this is the case? Particularly people that aren't necessarily privy to all the information that some of us may otherwise be. And so there's three principal lines of effort, three principal sources of data. There's essentially the first principles argument, which basically says counter to common belief that life is common in the universe. How do we know life should be common in the universe? There's 20 billion sun-like stars in the universe. The sun is a population one star. There are planets like this, there's stars like the sun that are 5 billion years older than the sun. That's plenty of time for other civilizations to evolve on these other planets. There's recent scholarship that says that life evolved on Earth in the Hadean era. The Hadean era was before the crust even cooled.
I think we're better off just talking about this. It's a little hard to understand. Basically, he's saying he's seen evidence that this is a reality, and he's decided to come out. He still has an NDA, Non-Disclosure Act, but he is confirming the government has crash retrievals and bodies, and this is an absolute fact. And we need the people in charge to come out and acknowledge that, because they're sitting on a huge opportunity for humanity to go to the next level. Just imagine, they're not filling up their gas tanks to get here. They're using a form of energy that could save this planet from its own destruction. That's the biggest thing. It's aliens, yeah, but, or whatever. It's technology. What do you think?
I brought up Cam and Ashley and John.
Yeah.
I'd love to get some of your feedback after sharing your very personal experiences. What comes up for you on the bigger global stage, the global perspective?
I'll let everybody else go first. I have a lot to say about that disclosure discussion.
Okay, Ashley, what about you?
I would say it's inevitable, but we are going to be the ones, the people, the general people will be bringing disclosure through, through platforms like this. I signed up for New Paradigm Institute. I went there, and what I was tapping into through my connection links was that it will not be that challenging. Once we hit a certain level of critical mass collectively, it's going to unfold naturally with ease. So we don't need to add more fire and more fuel to the fire. You can let it play out, and releasing how we think it's going to work. I think there's just a little bit of that consciousness that we need to be fighting for, that we're moving out of. That's my take on it.
You became a little alien there for a while with your lagging voice, but
Actually,
Yeah.
your internet went into the wonky zone. So
Okay, sorry about that. I don't know. It booted me out earlier. I'm not sure. Normally my Zoom works pretty well.
yeah, I don't know if there's other people in the household that might be using bandwidth. That sometimes can happen if somebody's downloading a movie. That can cause an issue.
I personally think that it's going to be the individual. I think we've brought this up before, but military is not who our star family are looking to. They're looking to each of us. There's billions of us. Each of us are completely unique, and they want to know who we are. They're as fascinated with us as we are with them, and they want a rich relationship. I found that myself, and every one of us have something to share that is completely unique about ourselves to the universe, and they're totally and ready for us to make that leap. And it's just literally making the effort. I just walk outside and say hi to our star family, and they say hi back. It's that easy.
All right. John's giving me goosebumps. It's
Hey,
that easy. Intent.
Hey, John, what did Jimmy Carter say about UFOs when you talked to him?
He really didn't talk a lot about it, Alan, but he talked about the event that he had down in South Georgia, where he was giving a meeting at a Lions Club, and they were all gathered outside in this beautiful golden energy. It was about treetop level, and it came towards him, and then it receded back. And, you know, he was the captain of a nuclear sub, so he knows constellations, he knows things that are, you know, in the sky, and, you know, he knew what he saw. And I actually wrote to President Carter and told him every one of my early events that I shared with you tonight. And he wrote me a lovely note back saying that he so appreciated my narrative. And um, he's been a great inspiration to me. And
Wow.
it's been an honor to know
Great.
him.
So Cam, you watched a lot of the disclosure of the Global Disclosure Day with Sandy. What did you make of the whole thing, of what you've seen?
I hope I can take a little time because I have a lot to say about it. First of all, what was so positive about it that I really, really enjoyed was talking about the whistleblowers. I think that the whistleblowers coming forward is crucial. And that's why in 2017, you know, we had the Tic Tac UFO, all of that coming forward, and of course, Grush later and so forth. The thing is that the masses who I would say are asleep, they're sleeping, right? They're the sleepers who have not awakened to this yet. They have had the subconscious programming their entire lives that this is all to be ridiculed, and that obviously in Hollywood and so forth, that, you know, let's make fun of that and so forth. It's not, aliens are a silly thing, right? They need people with credibility. And so I love what Danny Sheehan and everyone else who's been involved with working with whistleblowers and whistleblower protection. So that's just, it was amazing information. The more that whistleblowers can come out, obviously, the more people are going to awaken, and we're having a massive awakening. I mean, just look what's happened in the last 4 years since the whole COVID experience. And so with that, along with the Tic Tac and along with Grush and everyone else who's coming forward, of course, Dr. Stephen Greer, he has interviewed countless people and put them, one of the greatest things that Greer has ever done, I feel, you know, very impactful. I watched every single video of every single witness that he brought forward, you know, from military to unacknowledged special access programs and so forth, right? So with that said, that's extremely positive. And you know, those of us who meditate and we've awakened and so forth, you know, it seems very easy to us, but it's going to take more and more whistleblowers. And so if we not only get their protection so that they're not afraid to come forward, but we actually reward them. There's whistleblowers in other areas that aren't UFO related that they're actually coming forward and they're getting a GoFundMe and they're getting $500,000 or $1 million or so forth, because one of the scariest things is that they'll lose their career, they'll get fired, they won't have a way to make money anymore, and they have to obviously pay their bills and take care of their children and their family and so forth, right? So if they're even rewarded, then that's just going to open the floodgates. What was very interesting is that I don't hear anybody talking about the why of the secrecy. You know, I've personally, with my own opinion, of course, from all my research, the why is one of the most important things that you could possibly talk about. I listened to that discussion twice, it's over 3 hours, and they never ever talk about the why. And you typically don't hear it from anybody else either. And the whole reason why, now they touch base on the technology, as you also touched base on just recently, Alan. The 0 point energy technology. Now, there's multiple technologies. I mentioned a couple earlier, but that's the one I want to focus on. 0 point energy technology, the quantum vacuum, the ether technology that's pulled directly out of the air, that's unlimited, that's enough energy that they mentioned in this discussion, of course. In 1 cup, you have enough energy to boil all the oceans on the planet. That unlimited energy, imagine what it could do. Imagine how it could change everyone's lives. You have a little tiny box and you're in the middle of Africa or India. I think about the 3 billion people that don't have indoor plumbing, that don't have any electricity, all the poor people, as well as everyone else. You're going to have all of a sudden you're going to have clean water. You're going to be able to do all these other things with AI. We're going to be able to have automation, so we can have automated human labor, and it goes on, and that gets into a whole nother world that we could have had over 70 years ago. And what I really want to point out is that I think it's not only ironic, but it's beautiful and poetic that we are in the exact month 70 years ago, October of 1954, Lockheed Skunk Works perfected zero-point energy technology acquisition and anti-gravity, electrogravitic, transdimensional travel technology in October of 1954. And that was a classified document that Dr. Greer actually has in his possession. Obviously, before that, Nikola Tesla, T. Townsend Brown, and many others had already actually figured it out, but they were defunded and so forth. Obviously, J.P. Morgan with Nikola Tesla defunded him. He tried to do the Wardenclyffe Tower and all that. And so after that, of course, you had more and more people who came out as inventors with free energy technology. The proof is right there in the pudding that a lot of these people have been unfortunately murdered and or silenced, scared to death, and they just disappear, and they've been raided. All their stuff has been taken by the government. And so what's really, really interesting is that what is the why? What is the reason why? They don't want us to have that technology. But the craziest thing is that at the same time, they're screaming about climate change. Well, if they could eliminate climate change in 1954, October 1954, if not earlier, 70 years ago. And they know about that technology, and they had the choice, and they chose not to. They chose to kick the can on oil, gas, coal, nuclear, solar, wind, geothermal, all the rest of the energy acquisition technologies, and not allow us to have zero-point energy technology. We would have never had climate change. It would have never been a thing. So how come the same people, the people at the World Economic Forum, these people in Davos, are screaming about climate change? They're so obsessed with climate change that they're drooling practically when they talk about it. But they've had the answer. They've had the solution.
I'm going to come in for a moment because you're taking us into a whole other topic. Yeah,
Okay.
and I appreciate that. And we also try to finish the show by 8:30. And I still want to hear from John Martin. Has a beautiful video he provided, closing song. So I appreciate that. And we have actually done shows on some of the topics that you're talking about. But I want to keep it to tonight, to really the theme for the evening, which is the beautiful experiences that you and Ashleigh and John and Alan have had, and really the focus, because we don't have control over what they do and the big bad they, but we do have the opportunity to, what Whitley said, live our lives in joy, raise vibration, be in gratitude, and I want us to come back to that vibration and that experience. But I do appreciate your knowledge of history and your knowledge of those parts of reality. Thank you.
Well, real quick, Ashley mentioned about the masses coming to a certain point. And have you heard of the 100th monkey tipping point?
Sure, of course.
The 100th monkey experiment. Okay, that's all I wanted to add. That will bring us into a high vibration once again. 100th, I think we're going to reach the 100th monkey very soon.
Absolutely. And I think that's why shows like what Alan does, what we're doing, every time we hear you speak, each of you, every time we listen to John's music and watch the video we're about to show, it's part of that 100th monkey awakening of consciousness. It's like, okay, it's okay to have these experiences. It's okay to talk about these experiences. It's okay to acknowledge, these other dimensions, and to move out of the ridicule and into the, hey, this is part of reality.
Yeah.
You know, I do think that's one of the reasons the government is keeping it a secret, because they don't know how to talk about it. And the beings, whatever they are not there to give us technology so we can make weapons. They're here to help elevate who we are so we can open up our consciousness, be telepathic, raise our vibrations, and have the incredible world, the awakening world we deserve to be in. That we incarnated for that reason, to make this the world that it is peaceful, it is loving. You know, one quote I just want to leave you with is that H.G. Wells, who wrote The War of the Worlds, later on sort of regretted all that violence, and he said in this quote, "Someday people will look back at old papers or magazines and think, was there ever such a world?"
Yeah.
Where people could make war and kill each other over words in a book and all that stuff. I mean, we're coming out of that phase, I think, into vibrational awareness, which is why John's here.
You know, perfect timing. Shoshana in the chat box just wrote, "Such powerful shares. John, your music feels like it opens interdimensional portal." Well, that's a perfect segue to a video that we're about to see. For those of you who haven't watched this before, John goes outside and he plays music and he speaks to his friends. And I want you to know that I try and imitate you, John. I try and just go into periods where I'm like thinking, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'll be thinking about the different, thank you, Alan Steinfeld. Thank you, Ashley Piefer. Thank you, Cam Herndon. So let's all learn from John. And this is a beautiful way to, again, experience the way that John experiences the other beings. Let's all learn from this. Here's a new video from John that he created just for tonight's show.
Yeah, thank you, John.
It's my pleasure, Alan. Thank you.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Thank you, friends. Wonderful. Thank you, my friends. That's just great. Thank you, lovely friends. Wow. Thank you, beautiful ones. Oh, yeah, you keep both of y'all in there. Thank you, beautiful friends. Thank you. That was awesome. Wow. That was really awesome. Thank you. Thank you, my friends.
Just randomly. It's never random, is it, dear friends? Wow. That's not the greatest thing you've ever seen. Wow, friends. Spectacular. It's never random, is it, dear friends? Wow. That's not the greatest thing you've ever seen. Wow, friends. Here you are. Hey, sweet friends. Hey, lovely ones. Right by there. Hey. Hey, gorgeous ones. Hey, my beautiful friends. Thank you. Hey. Oh, I was hoping you'd come by tonight. Thank you, my friends. How beautiful is that? Thank you, beautiful ones. Thank you, my lovely friends. That was lovely. Thank you so much. Hey, beautiful ones. Hey, my gorgeous friends. Thank you for coming to see me. Hey, beautiful ones. I was asking what your name was. Thank you, sweet friends. Love you. Thank you, friends. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Oh, there's my friends. Oh, there's two. Oh, how gorgeous. Wow. Gorgeous. So awesome, friends. Beautifully done. Wow. That was great. Thank you, sweet friends. So lovely. Hey, thank you, my friends. How absolutely beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Hey, my dear friends. Hey, gorgeous ones. So wonderful. Thank you, sweet friends. Thank you, beautiful ones. Absolutely beautiful. Thank you, loveliest. So important to me. Thank you. Thank you, gorgeous ones. Thank you, my dear friends. So beautiful. Have a lovely night. Thank you. There you go. Come right through. Hey, friend. Thank you. Thank you, gorgeous one. Thank you, beautiful one. Hey, hey. Yes, indeed. Thank you, my lovely one. That was fantastic. Thank you. Gorgeous. Thank you, my beautiful one. Thank you for that. Beautiful one. Oh, my goodness. Hey, loveliest. Oh, you are gorgeous. Hey, beautiful one. Hey, my sweet friends. Oh, how lovely. Thank you. Thanks for coming to see me, dear friends. Look, an airplane. So wonderful. Oh, they're doing it. Thank you, they're beautiful absolutely one. Doing it. Oh, my gracious. Thank you, friends. Hey, gorgeous. So wonderful to see you tonight. Thank you, beautiful one. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you. Gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. Wow. Thank you, friend. Oh, how beautiful. Thank you, gorgeous ones. With the universe, and that's what happens is you're just naturally aligned with something that's so inspiring, it's so beautiful, it's so important, and so loving and giving.
Beautiful, John.
Thanks, y'all.
It just goes to show that you're so tuned in that the universe mirrors back your divinity, reminding you.
We are
That was
all
amazing.
divine. Absolutely. There's a divinity in each of us. Actually, I
Absolutely.
agree with that so much. And that's what they say to us, how important each and every one of us are. We could be, greatly reduced in, the view of others in the world, but the universe knows who we are. And they respect and love us very much. They gave me the name of my book, The Universe Loves You. I was thinking, the loving universe, and they said, that's not what we said. It's the universe loves you, was very clear.
I want to encourage people, since you brought up the book, I want to really encourage people to get it. It's a beautiful book. And you can get it on Amazon. You can get it on a lot of different places. But if you go to Amazon and just write in The Universe Loves You, John Martin, it'll come up. Make sure you put The Universe Loves You, because there's a lot of John Martins out there. But if you put in The Universe Loves You, John Martin, it'll come right up. And it's available also on Kindle, or hardback or paper book. It's a beautiful, beautiful book, John, just like you are. Really, I'm going to read a couple of the comments from our audience. We didn't get a chance to read too many, but Dr. Laura writes, "You are Galactic John, the guitar impresario of Gaia." Dia Therese writes, "John, I am infused with tingling beauty. When I've popped a few of my raspberry friends into my mouth before thanking them, I hear your soothing voice and guitar prompting me to say, thank you, beautiful. I love you." Even with eating raspberries.
Everything is enrobed in love, and we should honor and just promote that, because it's really all that matters, truly.
Absolutely. Well, we're at that time where these are our closing thoughts. So each of you has a moment for what your closing thought for the night is. And we'll go to Cam, then Ashleigh, then John, and then Alan.
I just wanted to thank John. That was unbelievable. I've been doing C5 since 2009, and what you captured. Have you ever met Chris Bledsoe, John?
I know Chris. I mean, I've spoken with him a couple times online.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that just reminded me of Chris's work, and he's such a gentle, beautiful, loving soul, and so are you. And I just, oh my gosh, I was just thinking, getting goosebumps, about that. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing all of that. It was incredible.
Kevin, and I was very touched by your story, and Ashleigh as well. And it will absolutely touch every aspect of our lives. And I so honor your journey, both of your journeys, and thank you for your honorable work. It's a noble effort, and that's why we all are doing this. And what an honor to be here tonight. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Ashleigh, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone who has been here, who has decided to open their heart and hold that vibration of love and peace and let that expand out. You can be the change.
And my wonderful co-host, Mr. Steinfeld.
Well, Scott, it's always fun to do these. If people want to know about my contact story, it's in my book, Making Contact. I didn't want to go through it again, but it was a vibrational shift, and I was already into UFOs, but when I had this, maybe it was abduction. It wasn't as a Whitley Strieber abduction, but it was a contact that with other levels of being that just it was a change in how I thought about the world. I mean, I suspected such a thing happened, but then when you experience it, when these beings show up, it's like, really, this stuff is real, and John proves it's real just by that. But I think the whole planet's going to go through this in the next couple of years. Like this, it's like already a science fiction movie, but when they really start to arrive, and I think that's what's imminent, a mass arrival, a mass contact. I think this is why the government's finally coming out, because we need to be prepared for this other level of reality. And we are doing that work here on this program to show it's not fearful. There's nothing to be afraid of. On a soul level, whoever those beings are equal to us. And we just have to remember that. There's nothing to be afraid of. They can't abduct you if you're in your right sense of self. They're not going to do that. They want us to play at the level they're at. So this is a moment in history. This is a shift in the nature of reality. It's like, you're in third gear and the clutch goes down, and we're in that shift. So we're about to take off, and I think we're going to see a world that we didn't even suspect was possible in a good way. There might be a little rough patches, but in a good way, it's going to be a change that beyond the imagination, and people only imagine what they think they know. So get ready for a new epoch of human civilization and abundance and free energy, like Cam was saying. If you get that, we're not enslaved to the old system anymore. So, and we're then here for the reason we incarnated, is to be creators, to emulate creation. That's my final word there.
Thank you so much, Alan. It's always a joy to collaborate with you. We've been working together for 35 plus years. So
since you showed up in Maui, I was sleeping in a tent, and you said you want to be an assistant director. That was 1989. So we have a history, Scott.
35 years, buddy. 35 years. All right. My closing thought is, I believe that this is a dream world, and we're all part of this incredible cosmic dream, which having our own individual dream within the cosmic dream. And some of us are going to dream that we have an experience with a deceased ancestor. Some of us dream of connecting with angels. Some of us dream of connecting to an archetype, Jesus or Mary Magdalene. And some of us dream that we're connecting with ET in our living room. Some dream that we're connecting with ET in the sky. And some of us are dreaming that we're going to wait to see when it kind of becomes more group consensus reality with government disclosure. They're all beautiful dreams. And no dream is right or wrong or good or bad or better, just different. But I do encourage us to consider that we have more control over the dream that we're dreaming than maybe we sometimes realize. And so may we all choose wisely and make those choices through joy, through gratitude, through appreciation, through meditation, through various spiritual practice. Playing a musical instrument is just as beautiful a spiritual practice as meditation. Martial arts is just as beautiful a practice. Time in nature. We all have different ways of connecting. Let's use our spiritual practice, whatever it may be, to open our hearts, open our minds, and manifest a dream that's as filled with love and compassion as possible. Those are my closing words for the night. And I am so grateful for my beautiful beloved brother Omashar, who is going to conclude our evening as only Omashar can.
And what beautiful closing or opening words, Scott. And I just want to remind Alan, I don't think that spacecraft have stick shift.
Thanks for the reminder. Yes.
This is is yearning, distant light, worlds converging, love in our hearts keeps us flowing, light in our minds, spirit emerging, moving on through all the troubles, letting them go. Life unravels, homeward we travel. Whoa, homeward we travel. Whoa. We're not alone on this blue-green planet. Angels are here to assist us. Seeds that we sow, growing within us. Hands that we hold. We're here to serve, and moving on through all the troubles, letting them go. Life unravels, homeward we travel. Whoa, homeward we travel. Whoa, distant light, soul is yearning. Distant light, spirit emerging, love in our hearts keeps us flowing, light in our minds, spirit emerging, moving on through all the troubles, letting them go. Life unravels, homeward we travel. Homeward we travel. Homeward we travel. Homeward we travel. Distant light, soul is merging. Distant light, worlds converging.
It's all Twinkle Omashar. I'm going to go to gallery view one last time. And a big thank you to Omashar, to John Martin, to Ashley, to Cam, to Whitley, and to all of you. And a big thank you to all of you watching on Facebook and on YouTube, all of our broadcast partners. And also, more and more of you I know are watching the recordings. So whenever you watch this, whether it's tonight or 5 years from now, thank you. Also do want to let you know what's happening next week as we enter All Hallows Eve and Sacred Samhain. It's our annual show, and it's going to be really special. Eden Amadora and Elizabeth Seraphine are my guests. Now, there's an amazing story here. Some of you have already heard it. I got the vision for the two of them to do this show about 2 months ago. I talked to Elizabeth. We wanted to do a show together. I got to know her. I said, I want to connect you with my friend Eden Amadora. I think you two would really be a good vibe. And she said, yeah, I know Eden. I've heard of her, but they didn't know each other well. So she said, yeah, I'd like to do that. And I talked to Eden, and Eden said, yeah, I know a little bit about Elizabeth. I think it'll be a good. So the three of us separately from talking all kinds of said, yeah, let's do a show together. Eden then left for Egypt. She gets to Egypt. She's on a tour with only 10 people. One of the other 10 people was Elizabeth. I mean, and they didn't realize it until they both showed up in Egypt on the same tour at the same time. So that's kind of, as Eden said, predestined. And they are going to share their wisdom with us and really help take us through the portal of Sacred Samhain. We've been talking about how the veils are thinning and thinning and thinning. Well, this time of year is when the veils are thinnest. Omoshore will be with us. However, that picture in the middle is them together in Egypt. Eden immediately let me know, you're not going to believe this, Scott. Elizabeth is in the same tour group as I am. And then they took that picture together. So it's going to be a very magical night. Wednesday night, October 30th. Please do join us. And the next Saturday night, it's another soul search evening with psychics and healers to work with you. So have a beautiful, beautiful sacred Sunday tomorrow. And remember, we can make any moment sacred by choosing to see divinity in all. Let's do that tomorrow, okay? And I'll see you on Wednesday night. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. And good night.